Welcome to Discovering True Health, where our goal is to provide you with cutting-edge health information through research, interviews with experts, and personal journeys to true health. Our message is a message of hope and healing, and our mission is to bring you on a journey to discovering true health, to not only find wellness, but to thrive. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Discovering True Health, your weekly deep dive into health and wellness. Thank you so much for being here. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay up to date on all our upcoming shows. You can also check out additional information on our website, Instagram, or Facebook. All those links are below. So today we'll be learning about why gut health is so vital for achieving true health and its connection to fatigue and mood imbalances. And I'm very excited to introduce to you my guest today. She's an amazing soul and a natural born healer, and we'll get to her story a bit later on in the show. So welcome, Dr. Adeola Mead, and thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you so much, Christy. I'm really happy to be here with you.
Me too. So Dr. Mead is a naturopathic physician with 15 years of experience at her integrative wellness and family medicine practice. Her practice focuses on treating the whole person, not just the symptoms, and using her experience to identify the root cause of symptom patterns and then developing a treatment plan that focuses on those root causes. So Dr. Mead has developed a 40-day program that it's accumulation of her 15 years of experience, and it focuses on healing those with digestive issues, fatigue, depression, and anxiety. So tell us all about your 40-day program.
Sure. Yeah, my 40-day program is called the 40-Day Fresh Start, and it's very much my brain baby. After about 15 years of seeing patients who would come with this very specific constellation of symptoms, so it was always fatigue, preceded by stress, long-term stress, and then fatigue, also with digestive disturbances and either brain fog, depression, or anxiety. And I just thought there has to be a way to help these people, particularly women, without just kind of putting out symptom fires. Often they come to me after having been on an antidepressant or some sort of hormone therapy or all sorts of digestive aids that just didn't work. And there hadn't been a focus on how those three main concerns tie together and are focused on gut health, underlying gut health imbalances. So I developed the program really to identify where the imbalances were, improve overall health by focusing on gut health, and then also having a space where people could implement self-care, therapeutic self-care skills so that after we address the concerns, they'd have great habits in place to have ongoing wonderful health.
So important to continue that journey and have that support.
Yes.
Now you're based out of Seattle. Is this something we can all do virtually if we don't live in the area?
Absolutely. So it is a program that we can do online. The meetings are online, and the coursework is also delivered via email.
Great. All right, so let's get more into the gut-brain connection. So our gut is actually the control center of all the operating systems in our body. It affects mood, hormones, immune system, our overall well-being. So it's really important. Can you give us some more details about the importance of gut health? What types of complications can happen with an unhealthy gut? And what are some of the best steps to heal and rebalance our gut health?
Sure. Yeah, the gut is the house of our digestion, of course. So if there's an imbalance, then you're going to have improper processing of our food, which is our fuel, which can contribute to fatigue for sure. It's also where most of our immune system is. So if there's any inflammation or imbalance there, then you're going to have an impaired immune system and immune function. Most of our neurotransmitters are produced in the gut. For example, 95 to 99% of serotonin is produced in the gut. So if there's an imbalance there, then that's going to affect the mood and cognition and a sense of well-being. So gut health is paramount to having overall health. And the best ways to improve gut health really is just identifying where there is an imbalance and our biggest area of control is what we put into our bodies, because anything we put in our mouths ends up in our gut. So then figuring out what is the best way to fuel our bodies that will minimize inflammation, improve gut health, and therefore impact overall health.
And you talked about immune system, and keeping our immune system right now really strong is so important. So talk a little bit more about the connection with our gut and the immune system, and how can a healthy gut make our immune system more robust and function better?
Yeah, so like I said, most of the immune system is in the gut. A lot of the centers for producing immune cells are found in the gut. So if the gut environment, which is made up of, lots of microbes, some of which we're still learning about. So if there is an imbalance of the beneficial ones as opposed to the non-beneficial ones, and we always have a mix of the two, then those cells that produce our immune cells are going to be in an environment that isn't optimal for them to do what they need to do. So making sure that the gut environment is healthy will make it so that their immune system that's housed there, it can do what it's supposed to do, and their immune system can be strong. Also, when we eat foods that are more inflammatory, and there are a lot of inflammatory foods, sugar, for example, alcohol in excess, lots of processed foods are just inherently inflammatory because our body is meant to process it the way that we consume it at the amounts that we consume it as a culture. If we put lots of those foods into our bodies, then we're going to have more inflammation. And inflammation really is just your immune system trying to keep you alive. It's just a process where you're trying to heal. When you get a cut, you have some swelling, you have some redness, and immune cells flood that area to heal the breach in your skin. And that is basically what it does throughout the body when there is any damage to any cells. So when we put foods that increase inflammation in the body, your immune system basically is just trying to help you heal. So making sure that we are engaging with foods and our environment in a way that minimizes inflammation makes a big difference to keeping us healthy.
So you don't want to be in constant inflammation, is what you're saying?
No.
That's want it to kick in when it needs to kick in, but not constantly. And that's fascinating. It actually, the immune system actually lives in our gut.
Yes, most of the immune system is in the gut. There's lots on our skin too, like that's our first defense is the skin, and there are lots of immune cells there. We have some, throughout the body, there are lymph nodes, but so much of our immune system is housed in the gut.
Fascinating. Now, this has always been very confusing for me. What's your advice on probiotics, prebiotics, digestive enzymes? There's so many out there. What do you recommend when it comes to those and taking those?
It really depends on the person. Some people need more prebiotics, and prebiotics are just foods or substances that our probiotics or our beneficial bacteria in our bodies need to feed on to grow healthy and strong, to maintain an environment in the gut that is beneficial for us and healthy. And the probiotics are the actual microbes, and often you'll see things like lactobacillus and bifidobacterium when you look on the labels, and they are the ones that we need in high amounts in the gut to maintain that healthy environment. And everyone has different beneficial bacteria. Like, we're so individual and unique in our gut microbiome makeup. But we know that there's some that will always produce positive effects in the body. And so some of those are the ones you see, commercially available. And then digestive enzymes, it depends on how well the person is digesting. Sometimes, if you are not chewing your food thoroughly enough, right, then your digestive enzymes don't have a chance to really get in there and break the food down. Some people are just deficient in enzymes somewhat naturally, like lactose intolerance. Some people just don't break down wheat very well because they don't have the right amount of enzymes. And then sometimes it's just that we are eating foods that don't allow us to produce enough digestive enzymes on a consistent basis, so that we are low in those. And when we try to eat foods, we don't break them down properly. So it really kind of depends on the person and where they're having more of their issues to see what would be appropriate at that time for them.
Got it. So yeah, that's it's individualized, everybody's different. So we'd have to actually get in there and see what each person needs. You mentioned microbes. I've always been fascinated with the microbiome. I've gone down the rabbit hole, and I know there's still a lot we don't know about it. It's so fascinating, and they're still doing a lot of research. Can you talk about what the microbiome is and its function and importance in our bodies?
Yeah, so the gut microbiome is basically the collection of microbes that make up most of our body, really. We're more microbiome than we are human DNA. There are all these bacteria and viruses and funguses and all these other, tiny microscopic microbes that make up so much of our bodies and our immune system, and they're housed mostly in the gut as well. So you have to have a very delicate equilibrium among them. And I always say it's like a real estate war. If you have enough beneficial bacteria, they'll crowd out the non-beneficial ones. But if for whatever reason, due to inflammatory foods or even stress and hormone imbalances, or even antibiotics can kill good and bad bacteria alike. But if the non-beneficial bacteria start to take over because there's just more of them, then you have the ill effects of inflammation in the gut and an unhealthy gut. So the microbiome basically is a very unique system of microbes that help keep us healthy.
So fascinating. And real quick, just to touch on inflammation just a little bit more, because I thought of something. So inflammation is good if we need it, but bad if we're triggering it with foods and other things. Is that?
Yes, absolutely. You need inflammation always if there's damage to any cells in the body. That's basically how we heal. And if it's just a cut, no problem. If it's a minor injury, no problem. But often, especially in our society, especially right now through this pandemic, there's so much stress that our body is producing lots of stress hormones just to cope, which is normal. But when it becomes a long-term situation, then your immune system is activated more. And it's now reactive to so many things. It's not just like this one discrete incidents that it's trying to rally to help you heal. Now it's just high stress hormones all the time that initially are anti-inflammatory, so they help you survive and move through. But if they're produced at high levels for a long period of time, then they promote chronic inflammation, a chronic inflammatory response, so that when, for example, you have a virus that your body's supposed to fight against, if you've been stressed at work and having lots of anxiety and eating foods that are inflammatory, then when it's supposed to mount this response against the virus, it has a really hard time doing that because the reserves are somewhat low. And your immune system only has so much of a capacity, right? So that's why we need to stay in an anti-inflammatory state so that when we do need to use our immune reserves, they're available and strong.
Understood. Very interesting. All right. Now you do some really in-depth diagnostic testing in your 40-day program. And like we were just talking about, everybody's body's different. Everybody's gut's different. So that's really necessary. So can you talk about what types of diagnostic testing you do and what types of things you're looking for and finding with the testing?
Sure. Yes. It's important to know exactly what we're treating. If you want to get to the root cause, we need to know exactly what we're treating for that specific person. So I do standard blood tests. So we look at a complete blood count. We look at vitamins and minerals, B12, magnesium, calcium, sodium, potassium ratios. We look at cholesterol. We look at thyroid hormones because that can be a big part of why people are feeling fatigued and imbalances in those hormones. Actually, look at body temperature as well. That gives me a good idea of how your metabolism is working because I have a lot of patients who have like chronically low body temperature, which you might just think, oh, I just feel kind of cold all the time. But you have to think about how our body's one big chemistry project going on, just like a big chemistry experiment. And you think of like a pot of water boiling, right? Like it has to be at 100 degrees for it to boil. If it's at 92 degrees, it'll be hot, but it won't boil. If it's at 96, closer, but it won't boil. And the same with our body. We need to be at a certain temperature, right about 98.6, for our chemical reactions to perform properly. So I check and see if people are chronically low in their body temperature, then probably they don't have enough metabolic resources to have all the chemical reactions happen the way that they should, and they're likely to be fatigued. The other thing I look at is food sensitivities, actually, because there are lots of healthy foods, not processed foods, vegetables and grains and fruits, but not every food is healthy for every person. Everyone responds differently to different foods. So I like to see if there are foods specifically for each person that might be causing more of a problem. And then usually as a treatment, we'll take that set of foods out of the diet for about 30 days, give the gut a clean palate, reduce inflammation that way, and then test and see which ones will cause more of a reaction once you've kind of cleaned the slate, or ones that you can tolerate better. And then the other testing we do is gut microbiome testing as well, which is fascinating because we talked a little bit more about the gut microbiome and how it's this collection of different microbes, but they produce all sorts of chemicals in the body. They help to produce neurotransmitters and hormones and maintain the balances of those, and they affect the immune system. So we look at actual metabolites in the gut microbiome to make sure that they are at the right levels to help you promote your health. And deficiencies and excesses in some will lead to more dis-ease or discomfort. So we see where you're at, and then we work on developing a diet and lifestyle plan to help you maintain really adequate levels of those metabolites to help keep you healthy. So yeah, it's fairly comprehensive. And then we know if there's a dysbiosis or shift in the ideal balance of good and bad bacteria in the gut. We know if your neurotransmitters are at the right level. We know if you're dealing with a vitamin D or iron deficiency, or a thyroid imbalance, or a reproductive hormone imbalance, or if there are foods that you're eating that aren't best for you. So now we really get a picture of who it is we're treating and how we can best serve them.
I love that. And just to touch real quick, we talked about earlier, if we don't live in the area, we can still do the program. How does the testing work for long distance, those of us that are not in your area?
Sure. So the food sensitivity test kits and the gut microbiome test kits are finger stick kits, so I can have them shipped directly to people's homes. And as far as the more comprehensive blood testing, I can send a requisition that you would print out or download and take to any LabCorp. And then from there, you would have your blood drawn, and then we can review them.
Right. And I really love that you're doing the food sensitivity testing. For a lot of us, CV19 long haulers, we've been having a lot of inflammation issues, so a lot of us have been, trying to be on these anti-inflammatory food diets. But now that you talk about that, there could also potentially be a listed anti-inflammatory food that our individual body can have an allergy to. So it's really important step I never would have thought, and I'm sure a lot of other people aren't thinking of doing. So, so speaking of inflammation, I know we talked about it a little earlier. Can you talk a little more about inflammation, the negative effects on our bodies, what types of things can cause it, and what can we do to decrease it?
Yeah, so inflammation gone rogue is going to cause a lot of imbalances in the body, right? So it'll make you more susceptible to disease. It's going to make it so that you're more likely to be fatigued. It's going to shift that beneficial bacteria and non-beneficial balance in the gut. And it'll also make you more susceptible to like chronic issues that aren't necessarily immune in name. So chronic inflammation is underlying lots of metabolic disorders. So diabetes, heart disease, asthma, all those are basically signs of chronic inflammation in different tissues in the body. So it's really important to just note that if you're dealing with a problem on a chronic basis, it's because your body is always in this inflamed state, and that it is reversible. Even with autoimmune diseases, it's very possible to get to a place where your immune system is stable and better interacting with the rest of your cells and making your immune system strong and balancing all those other pieces. And it's also not necessary to like I say, like put out symptom fires, right? So it's not like for this boo-boo, you're going to put on an ointment, and for that boo-boo, you're going to put on a sling. Sometimes that's necessary, but a lot of times if you can get underneath, which is chronic inflammation, then a lot of concerns start to resolve because you've nipped it in the bud.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's the culprit, the inflammation for a lot of
Yes.
things.
Yeah, with chronic diseases, it's always some sort of chronic inflammation gone rogue. And it started with the best intentions to help you heal from some sort of damage. Like with diabetes, it's that blood sugar becomes very high, and that sugar is actually sort of toxic and damaging to blood vessel lining, and that can lead to more heart disease, right? So once you control the blood sugar levels, less damage to the blood vessels, and then less risk of heart disease. But you don't usually find that connection kind of drawn. So yeah, you balance blood sugars, it reduces your risk. Yeah, and same with asthma, for example, which is not something that I see all the time, but I just find all the time that once we reduce food sensitivities in a diet, that asthma symptoms always reduce or even disappear, because your body is dealing with so much inflammation that once you reduce the inflammatory exposure, now your lungs can work a little bit better. So even if it's like an environmental allergy, reducing the inflammatory load can just make your immune system stronger to deal with other exposures.
Fascinating. Now, your program addresses and helps heal depression and mood imbalances as well. What's your take on antidepressant pharmaceuticals, and what are some great alternatives or ways of healing this type of imbalance?
Yeah, so more and more depression and anxiety are being linked to inflammation in the brain. Right. So again, it goes down or comes all the way down to inflammation. And there can be so many reasons why someone has a mood imbalance. It could be a traumatic event. It could be recurring traumatic events. It could be just ongoing stress that has caused exhaustion really in the body. And then you have to think about, okay, how do we focus on that inflammatory process that's now being kind of transferred into the brain? And you have to go to the gut, because many of your neurotransmitters are produced in the gut in high levels. And there's this big connection between the gut and the brain. So if you can, like we said, make sure that what you're putting into your body is anti-inflammatory, and that not just food, right, but also thoughts can be inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. People can be inflammatory or anti-inflammatory. Yeah, like social scenes, politics can be inflammatory, anti-inflammatory. So you really have to think about your exposure and how you can choose anti-inflammatory exposures and anti-inflammatory fuel for both your body and your brain. And a lot of times too, it's just having a sense of compassion for yourself too. Like we all have worries and we all have blues, but at the point where it is impacting other parts of your life, you have to think about how your brain, your emotions, your thoughts are not separate from your body. So often just exercise makes a big difference, because you're moving your body, but somehow you're starting to feel better. Your mood has lifted. Well, when you exercise, you produce positive brain chemistry, anti-inflammatory brain chemistry. So there's no way to separate the two. So I think the best way is honestly to develop a diet and lifestyle that is truly healthy for you, specifically for you, and then thinking about all the triggers that might have contributed to the mood disorder in the first place. And, sometimes it's just like a propensity in the family. Like some people, it's like my grandmother was depressed, my mother was depressed, and I feel depressed. So you might have that tendency, but your genes, your genetics are not your destiny, right? We are learning more about
epigenetics.
Epigenetics, that's right. We're learning more about epigenetics, about how your genes are sort of a song, right? So there's some notes that you've been given, but you can play a melody on top of it, right? And then literally change the tune of your life and the way that your body functions. And your choices can turn genes on and off, gene expression on and off. So even if generations have been tending to a certain body composition or certain moods or certain temperaments, if one person in any of those generations were to decide, that's it, I'm going to choose something different, I'm going to eat healthy, I'm going to surround myself with exposures that are healthy and beautiful and positive, they can transfer those genes and the benefits of those choices to their children. So it makes a big difference what we choose, and we only choose the best for us when we know the best for us. So that method of inquiry, of figuring out what's best for our bodies and best for our minds, is so important. And then once we can figure that out, making the choices and being committed to making those changes on an ongoing basis is great for us, but then also great for the future generations, whether you have children or not. Like, when you take responsibility for your health in that powerful way, it really benefits everyone around you, and it inspires people too.
Beautiful. I love that. I love how you talk about how you can, break the chain of the past, and, because it's kind of grilled into us, at some point that, it's genetics, you're stuck with it. So yeah, epigenetics are so amazing to get into. And I love everything you just said about it. Now, you practice with natural alternatives in your practice. Why do you as a doctor choose naturopathic as opposed to the pharmaceuticals route? Can you kind of give us an overview on the two?
Sure. I do find that I very rarely use pharmaceuticals, and I can prescribe pharmaceuticals, and I do, but also very rarely, right? So if it's like, I don't know, someone has a raging infection that just came out of nowhere, we're definitely going to use some antibiotics for that and bring the inflammation down, bring some healing to it. But I very rarely do that because I find that natural medicine can be so powerful. And that's been my experience over the several years of practicing, is that often pharmaceuticals will just kind of put a Band-Aid on a situation, but they don't get to the underlying cause. So for example, an antidepressant helps to keep, many of them, like an SSRI, for example, that type of antidepressant keeps serotonin in the brain so that you don't recycle it and, use it and excrete it. So you just keep enough in the brain so that it does more work, or it works better over time. But the question is, how did you get so low in serotonin? And if serotonin is the problem, SSRIs or some of those medications, we still don't know how they work, is the thing. So we assume that it's doing something in the body, but there isn't a definitive, study and proof that they do exactly what we think they do all the time. So in my mind, we might as well just get to the root cause. So if it's a serotonin issue, let's just go to where serotonin is produced and make sure it's healthy, and all the systems and microorganisms and organs that help to produce it, let's make sure that they're as healthy as possible so that you can have enough serotonin. So I just tend to use, be it for an antimicrobial, be it for balancing hormones, reducing inflammation. There's just so many really powerful and multi-use natural agents. So as opposed to, okay, you're feeling depressed, I'm going to give you an SSRI. That helps with serotonin in the brain, and it might also help with digestive issues, but that's probably because so much serotonin is produced in the gut. So people will say, oh, I had IBS and my doctor gave me an antidepressant and my digestion got better. Well, that's because so much serotonin is produced in your gut that it shifted how much you're able to use, and now your digestion is better. I'd much rather just look underneath where those things happening in the body, see the body as a team, right? A team of systems that work together and just promote the proper function. And same with hormones, for example. Like, I have so many patients who come in and they had, women specifically had like difficult periods when they were younger, and they were just put on a birth control pill 25, 30, 40 years ago, and they just never thought about it again. Well, acne or, abdominal cramping or heavy periods, they can be helped with just a very specific dose of reproductive hormones, but it's not necessarily the problem, right? The problem is that there's some sort of imbalance. There's some sort of inflammation that led to an imbalance. And I find that when we figure those things out, like what actually went wrong, that we can avoid altogether oral contraceptive pills for things like PCOS and things that are not for contraception. If you want to balance hormones, then there are ways to balance hormones that are naturally. But I just find that pharmaceuticals tend to just want to put a Band-Aid on an issue without looking at the underlying cause.
Right. So it's not actually correcting it, it's the Band-Aid. And then also, I guess you think too, a lot of them come with a whole lot of other side effects that cause other issues potentially.
And then you end up with something else for the side effect of the first drug, and then something else for the side effects of the third. And you just there are no studies to show how well someone should respond to 7 or 8 medications at a time. It's usually this medication does this, so let's prescribe it. But what happens when you have 7 to 10 different medications that people are taking? We don't know how the body's supposed to respond to all those. There might not be contraindications. They might not counteract each other in the body, but how well is your body processing those things, right? So those are just questions that are still unanswered. But the point of medicine is not to make people vibrant in health. It's just to kind of keep symptoms at bay. And sometimes that's necessary. But my work is very much to help people get to a place of thriving. So we need to dig deep and then use agents that do many things in the body that are good anti-inflammatories, that also help to balance hormones, that help to, reduce all sorts of imbalances in the body. And you can find natural agents that do one natural agent that does 5 to 10 different things, which all line up with what that one patient needs. So it's just this big wide world of amazing tools and resources.
I love that. Yes, we all want to thrive. That's why we're here. In your 40-day program, you also touch on stress and sleep. We talked a bit about stress because it's a holistic program. How can those two both negatively impact our bodies, and what types of recommendations do you discuss with your patients? I know everybody's different, so.
Yeah. Stress is a big one. We're all under some amount of stress, and stress can be good. It can be motivating, right? And even stress hormones that are produced in response to a stressful event or anticipation of a stressful event, they can really help you perform, so that it can be good. But when you're under stress for a long period of time, and you're producing stress hormones for a long period of time, that initial benefit wanes and you can just start to become exhausted. Your immune system can kind of get tapped from always dealing with stress all the time and being at this heightened nervous system stage where you have two parts of your nervous system, or 2 switches, shall we say. There's a rest and digest or parasympathetic mode of your nervous system, and then there's the fight or flight mode of your nervous system. And if you're always in fight or flight, like you are running from a tiger, it's exhausting to your body, to your immune systems, to your hormones, and you're going to be exhausted. You're going to feel exhausted as well. So managing stress in all the different ways that we can becomes really, really important to minimize inflammation, to keep hormones balanced and so forth. And one of the best ways we can do that really is sleep. You mentioned sleep, but we regenerate cells while we're sleeping. So if we don't sleep, a lot of the damaged cells from, through the day, through the weeks, through the months, they don't get processed properly. Mm-hmm. So we're ending up with just this backlog of cells that need to be processed properly so that you can feel really rejuvenated, not just feeling awake in the morning, but that your cells in your body are rejuvenated.
You're actually rejuvenated.
Yes, actually rejuvenated, actually renewed, so that you can function better the next day. So for sleep, oh gosh, there's so many reasons that people can end up having poor sleep. So you have to deal with any biochemical imbalances, but a lot of times it's routine. Sometimes people just get into a routine of going to bed really late, or they have so much anxiety that they're not able to just calm their mind. So there are herbs, for example, that I use often to help calm the mind. So physiologically, you're not fighting against this, torrent of hormones and neurotransmitters that are out of balance. So we can calm that down with natural agents. But then developing a routine is so important for the body. We respond to routine. Everything around us is routine, like in the summer, there are longer days, we stay up later, but that switches, right, in the fall. So now there are shorter days, but our body responds to that. So when there's a shorter day, you start to produce melatonin as the sun goes down. And then you start to kind of wind down hormonally. Your thyroid, which would have produced more in the morning, that gets you out of bed and gets you moving, starts to reduce as you get further through the day, and then it switches to melatonin increasing, so that by the end of the evening, 8, 9, 10 o'clock, you should have enough melatonin so that you can transition to a restful night. But, in modern times, we have lights and screens and so much going on right up until bedtime. It's really hard for our body to switch into that more melatonin, less of an active mode, and it's hard to go to sleep. So I often have people just develop a really restful sleep hygiene routine. You make your room nice and cool, you make it dark, you turn off screens, you have something soothing, you read a boring book, just something like that. And the body will key in like, oh, it's time to get ready for bed. And before you know it, you're getting tired just from the first thing you do. You turn off your computer and you start yawning. But the body responds so much to routine that if you develop a trust, I talk about this a lot in my program, is you develop a trust with your body where it knows what to expect and you give it what it needs and you listen, then you can work together, right, with your body and have a really beautiful relationship with your body.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yes, I'm definitely one of those mind whirling, not being able to sleep.
I mean, there's a lot going on in our minds these days, but it just makes a big difference if we can develop these practices. And they're all practices, right? Like no one is perfect at anything, but if you develop a routine, then it's easier to do.
Absolutely. All right. So tell us a bit about your personal journey. How did you get into naturopathic medicine and the practice of it?
Sure. So apparently, I wanted to be a doctor from before I can remember. My mom tells me stories of my grandparents being sick, and I'd say, "Oh, you're not going to die, Grandpa. I'm your doctor. I'm going to take care of you." And I would just always talk like that. And then when I was growing up, I thought I'm going to be a doctor. I never considered anything else. And now I think about it, that it's been a long time coming, potentially even before I was born, because I come from a long line of healers and philosophers. And I grew up in this environment where it was very, very clear that the health of an individual was a function of the health of the community and the people you had around you and the medicine you had around you and the rituals you had around, and just that sense of belonging, and also a sense of being heard, being seen and being heard, and being loved, really quite practically, being served and cared for. So that always was the environment that I grew up in. And anytime we had, injuries growing up, my dad and my mom would just, take a look at us and quickly go into the kitchen and have some herbs ready. And it would just be just sort of miraculous, like what was a big gash and an arm before, within a few hours of putting some herbs on it, looked like nothing had ever happened. Or what felt like it was going to be a horrible flu, after a night of drinking some herbs, you felt great again. So it just made a lot of sense to me when I learned about naturopathic medicine to treat people as whole persons and not, symptoms that need to be addressed individually. It's like, of course, everything is related. And of course, nature is powerful in its ability to heal. And of course, the body knows what it needs to do if it has the support. It made just so much sense. And I just really loved and feel like it's an honor to be able to practice this medicine.
So beautiful. It's what you're born to do.
Absolutely.
Generation after generation. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all this knowledge. It was so wonderful talking to you. I'm going to be doing my complimentary consultation with Dr. Mead in the upcoming weeks to see if it's going to be a good fit for myself, as I'm still experiencing long-term effects from the virus. And I've been on a whole lot of medications over the last year and a half. So I feel like her program could really help me detox and help get my gut and, health, back on track. So I will keep you all posted on that and my progress. And we can all find you on dradeolamead.com. I'll post that link below for everybody watching that wants to check out your program. Is that the best way to join and contact you?
Yep, you can go to my website. You can also just email me directly at info@dradeolamead.com.
Wonderful. And the consultation is complimentary, so it costs nothing to see if it's a good fit for you. And remember, knowledge is power. The more you understand your body, the better you're able to stay healthy and prevent disease. Just a reminder, I'm not your doctor, so don't take this as medical advice. If you have specific questions about your specific case, your healthcare, feel free to reach out to your practitioner. If you like this video, please like and share it with others. This information could really help someone you may know. Also hit the subscribe button to be sure you don't miss out on our future shows. And stay tuned for the next episode of Discovering True Health.